Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of our podcast, Is Breakfast Included? How are you guys doing? Good? Great. Now that we got that out of the way, today's guest is Ozzie Henderson. Ozzie is a keyboard tech, playback tech, and photographer. We had a great conversation. He told me a little bit about how he started in the music business, his first big gig, his To Die For gig, which he got to do. We told a few stories about a tour that we were on together, and he told me what he liked for breakfast. Anyway, it was a great conversation. This is actually the tour wrap-up episode, and by the time you hear this, I will be home. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. I hope you dig it. Let's check it out. All right, you know how we started, right?
You tell me.
Tell everyone who you are.
Name's Ozzie Henderson. I'm a technician, currently working with Duran Duran and have been touring for 20 odd years.
20 odd years. Where are you from?
From the UK, born in London, Hackney.
And where about is Hackney?
East London.
East London.
Yeah, the real heartbeat of the city. As you
Is
say.
Is it really?
Well, to be honest, I mean, it's definitely a kind of creative hub of London for sure now, yeah. But yeah.
Is Hackney still the same as when you were growing up?
Certainly not. I mean,
Is anywhere the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was a kid, and Hackney was, a place where, my grandmom and grandmother, grandparents, my mum, went to from, Dominica, from West Indies. So when we came over here, that was like, everyone was in Hackney. Now, you can't afford to be in Hackney, so things have changed.
Now?
Yeah, now you can't afford.
Is it kind of like Brooklyn in New York?
I mean, kind of, yeah. I mean, it had the same connotations for sure years ago. And I think now it's changed, but, it still has Hackney has a ring about it, which is like, I'm from Hackney. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm from Hackney, proud of.
You represent.
I represent Hackney.
Sorry, Hackney.
Can only go better from here, right?
It can only go up. Anyway, just kidding.
I know.
What do you do, man? You're a technician.
So I'm a technician. I do programming and keyboards. That's pretty much all I've done touring-wise. I mean, in terms of like my department, which has always been keyboards and computers. I kind of got into that from... I kind of do the same thing I used to do in my bedroom, which sounds bonkers, right? But it's the same thing I used to do in my bedroom. As a kid, I always had a computer and a keyboard. Now, as an adult, I'm doing the air quotes. I mess about with...
He'll use that term loosely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very. And same thing.
Keyboard
and
computer.
Yeah, that's it.
And is that the basic tools to do what you do? I mean, I know you're a keyboard tech. You program keyboards. I guess now you program everything on a computer.
Yeah.
But back in the day, you actually had to program the keyboard, correct?
Things are kind of hosted more on the actual computer now. Whereas before, you maybe have to learn how to actually program the keyboard. But nowadays, you just use the, like we do, use a controller keyboard and have everything on a computer.
Yeah.
But, some gigs still require me to program, keyboards. No, I do that. No problem at all. I mean.
And you're also what they call a playback tech.
Yes. So the playback is what happens on a computer. The computer runs whichever program, either the MD likes or I prefer to use. And that has all the backing tracks. Backing tracks are the backing tracks that, from a production point of view, the band themselves can't play back because it's production of a record. So I look after that as well. Well, that is mainly what.
And like we talked about, there's playback tracks because you don't want to have a ton of musicians on stage. Yeah. You don't want to have an oboe player up there.
No. Have you ever seen oboe players? Joking. You know what I mean? No. It's like, you can have, the elements that you can add to recording are infinite, do you know what I mean? But then you may not want to have those playback live because it's just too expensive. So you commit them to a computer and I play that back for you.
I don't know. What was your first big gig?
My first gig was All Saints. And what happened there was I used to work in a studio in Ladbroke Grove with a group of musicians, and we'd go down there and just mess about with music and do stuff. And that was a studio that All Saints came out of. And then I had a friend who was kind of like their MD, a musician that was in the studio as well. And he was like, "Oh, come do what you do in the studio. Come do it on the road." I'm like, "No, I can't do that." Do you mean? So, he asked me once, he asked me twice, I think. And then it got to a point where I needed some money. I needed some cash. I need to earn some money. It wasn't, I was working in, like I say, these studios, but, they sometimes they pay, sometimes they don't pay very much. And you kind of want to have something that's regular. So I got to a point where I was like, "Do you know what? Let me just see what this opportunity means." When I'll say yes. So I said yes. Then it happens to be with the girls because I was in the studio with them, so I felt comfortable going on the road with them. And that was it. It's like I went from kind of doing studio sessions. I might get 1 or 2 sessions a week. I didn't know. For me, that was okay because it's just me.
Yeah.
Right. And then I went from that to this tour. I'm like, "Oh, that's really good." I went away for 6 weeks. Got 6 whole weeks of money.
Yeah.
Do you mean? So
it's kind of funny you say you needed something more regular, but we live in one of the most irregular industries that there is. But I get it. Yeah.
It's like it is irregular, but it's predictable. There is a predictability about it, but it isn't for the faint-hearted, I think, our industry now. But surely back then it was like it was an opportunity that presented itself that was like, okay, well, if you do this for an amount of time, you get this. I'm like, okay, well, that works.
Yeah.
So I did that tour. Thought about it. Thought I could do this again. Got what I called after tour blues. We were like, what to do? What do I do? What to do? Then the phone rang again, and it was another friend of mine from the same group of musicians, and he's like, "Oz, if you've done that, come and do this tour." I'm like, "No, I can't do it. No, I can't do it." And he asked me 5 times before I said yes.
Yeah.
And I said yes eventually, and that was Eurythmics. That was my second tour.
Wow.
So I went from All Saints to Eurythmics, and then I just kept on getting phone calls. It was good.
What's the highlight of your career?
The highlight, I suppose, is going to be for me personally. Obviously it's me personally, but one of the experience that I had that made me think, do you know what? If touring ends today, I'm happy for it to stop. Was working with Stevie. I got a call from.
You dropped something.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Wonder. Did I say Wonder? Mr. Wonder. And I got a phone call from the guy who used to run Music Bank, a guy called Nunu. And he was like, "Oz, are you sitting down?" I'm like, "I'm sitting down." He goes, "Well, at least I'll sit down now." She's saying, "If you're asking me if I'm sitting down." And he's like, "I've got a gig for you." I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "It's Stevie Wonder." I'm like, I've just started doing this. I've just met this in this rehearsal studio. The guy's there, and then they like me. We don't get on, and they're offering me work, and it's like Stevie Wonder. I'm like, really? So I ended up doing this press junket with him in the Savoy Hotel, London, and I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'm in a room with Stevie, right? Which is crazy enough, him calling your name.
Yeah.
Right? So then we're sitting in this hotel room, and a group of journalists would come in, one at a time. Let's say it was ITV or whatever it was. They would come in, they'd ask Stevie some questions, and then they'd say, "Stevie, do you mind playing me my favorite song by you?" And at every single point, you saw the interviewer just become whoever they were when they first heard that record and fell in love with Stevie.
Yeah.
They just melted into that. And that for me was like the highlight of wow. It's like, it's Stevie Wonder.
How many times a day did you do that?
Oh, I think every single time. Every single time. Because every time they asked for a tune, it was my favorite tune too.
Yeah.
Do you mean? And then to kind of, we did some more. I did some more from that point on. I did some more stuff with him. And we did this gig for Sheffield Wednesday, I think it was. And so we're doing a sound check, and Stevie's there. And I'm like, "Stevie, do you mind playing me my favorite my favorite tune by you?" I didn't say, "Do you mind playing me my favorite tune ever?" Because I'm like, everyone's going to say that, right? So I thought, can you play my favorite tune by you? He said, "Yeah, what is it?" He goes, I said, too high. I don't even know too high. I ain't going to sing it because I have it on record, right? I ain't singing it. But Too High by Stevie Wonder. And he's like, he just like starts playing the keys and he starts singing. I'm like, oh my God. Stevie has played my favorite tune of all time for me on like the piano right in front of me. That was like, it could end now and I'm happy.
Yeah.
To top it all, not continuing but I'm not showing off at all.
No. Keep going.
To top it all, the highlight of the whole thing was when Stevie said to me, Ozzie, give me your number. I'm like, that's it. If he calls, if he doesn't call, it's okay. He asked me for my number and he put it in his thing there and then. That to me was like, was certainly the highlight. I mean,
is that the only time you've ever been starstruck?
No, it's one other time.
Because in this industry, a lot of people walk with their chest puffed out like, I don't get starstruck.
No.
I get starstruck all the time.
I think to be in this industry, you have to be a fan of music. You can't just do it because you think it's a payday, because there may not be enough paydays to make it worth your while, in terms of your life. Do you mean, there might be, but there might not be. So you got to do it for another reason. Getting paid is good, but I think you have to have passion for what you do. You certainly have to have a passion for music to be in touring. Another time I got starstruck, and it's still somebody I don't think I could work for, is Sade Standard. Yeah. That was like me growing up, not just Sade, but the music.
Yeah.
I'm like, that kind
still.
of... Yeah. It's amazing, right? And so I think that's probably one, like, if I was, that's my kryptonite, if you like.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Going back to Stevie, I've never met him. I've never worked for him, But in 2017, I usually go to what they call the NAMM show in Anaheim as well. And apparently he's a regular there. But the year I went, 2017, when I started going back, I remember hanging out with a friend of mine, Marco, and then this crowd started just gathering. And you didn't see him, but there was this like aura coming. And then he walked up to the Mellotron booth. Yeah. And just started playing, and then I think I actually snapped up one of those pictures, right? But the what is the word? The energy he gave off, like you're in the presence of greatness.
Yeah, you are. I mean, it's like another really great memory of working with Stevie was in Latvia, and doing this gig. I think we had a like sound check or something. I had set up a keyboard in what ended up being our catering space. So we're sitting there having lunch, and Stevie's on the keyboard, like pretty much as we are now. I mean, you're in front of me, but Stevie is behind me on the keyboard, and he's playing and he's singing, "Can I have my Cheerios? Can I have my Cheerios?" And we're eating our food. And I'm like, Stevie's behind me, like he's obviously writing, right, doing his thing. I'm like, wow. Get another pinch yourself moment.
Yeah. Like I didn't become a fan of Stevie Wonder. My introduction to him was I just come. And then as I got older, I went back.
You can sing, I can't sing.
No, I can't sing. But no, I get it, man. I get it. So you and I have known each other over since 2010.
Right. So what's that? So what's that now? We're in 12 years.
You had hair.
Wow, I had hair, long hair. Bald now.
But we were on the Gorrilaz tour.
We were, yeah.
The Plastic Beach.
Yeah.
I didn't work for the Gorrilaz. I was with the opening act.
NERD.
But do you remember the lineup in that tour?
It was incredible.
We had De La Soul.
Yeah. Bobby Womack.
Mos Def.
Yeah.
The guys from the Clash.
Yeah.
Not including, Damon Albarn himself.
He was fantastic. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Damon. Again, one of my another great memory from the Gorillaz tour, the Plastic Beach tour, was just being around Bobby Womack. Do you mean? I mean, and it's like in the UK we had this thing where as a kid growing up, you had Capital Radio or BBC Radio. That was it pretty much until the pirate radio stations came along. And when the pirate radio stations came along, you kind of, it opened the world into what we generally call R&B now. But back in the day, we used to call it rare groove because we was like experiencing all this music that was old at that point. So you're like, 16 or whatever, that kind of teenage years, you're discovering this music, this rare groove, and you're hearing all these tunes. And one of my favorite tunes I discovered from back then was Bobby Womack, Why Did You Break My Heart? I thought, that's an amazing tune. You never think you're going to meet the guy, let alone work with him, right?
Yeah.
So, fast forward to Plastic Beach Joints, Bobby Womack. And then you're like, that thing about don't meet your heroes. No, meet your heroes. They're great, right?
What about those days before soundcheck when he would just come sit on the stage and sing,
and just
and there were more than not that he did that.
So I remember, I got on really well with Bobby. I mean, he would sit with me or sit for me and let me take pictures of him. I got on with his family as well. I mean, up to this day, and I'm still in contact. And that Plastic Beach tour was fantastic. It was a great tour. And Bobby Womack, meeting Bobby Womack will stay with me forever because that was beautiful. Do you mean it was just a beautiful experience for him? Yeah,
I think you and I were talking about that tour a few days ago. And one thing about me, during that tour, during that time of my life, I wasn't very happy. I wasn't in a good place. And I remember just kind of making myself smile. But I think I told you walking to catering. And as I was walking down the hall in catering, Mick Jones was walking out and he said, "Hey, Bernie." And then it just made my day that this guy that I'd look up to all my life knew my name.
I got a story about Mick Jones. So I think it's probably the first time. It would have been the first time that I met Mick, and across from where Damon's studio is, there was like a restaurant we used to go and have like lunch. And I went to the restaurant and I'm sitting next to him. So I said to him, "I know you was in a band, but I don't know much about your band. You mind telling me?" and even now, you'd be like, "It's Mick Jones." I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't know, right?" So it's like, "Oh yeah, we had a band called The Clash, and we did some stuff." And he's telling me all the history. And I'm like, "Okay, so will you guys be reforming? I think you get back together." He's like, no, I'll sing it. Sorry, it's terrible, right? I didn't know. I didn't know, but that's how humble he was in kind of me. He didn't expect me to know anything about him. Do you mean? And that was the tour, really. There were some very special people on that tour. Yeah. And, from Damon down, or up, whichever way you want to go, nobody had do you mean an ego, they were unapproachable or anything. It was just, and I think that extended to the NERD camp as well, because, you guys and, we all kind of just hung together. It wasn't there was no kind of separating. I don't feel that there was anyway.
No, it was a great tour to be part of,
It was a really good tour. Yeah. Do you mean? I think it's the kind of thing that you probably won't see again because, there's not a lot of people that who else could do something like that apart from Damon? You know what I mean? So
could bring people together.
Like that. Yeah, absolutely. Hypnotic Brass. What was that?
Yeah,
brothers. The brothers.
Yes, I remember them.
Right, but how many? I think at one point there's 85 people. 85 people on stage. Yeah, 85 people on stage.
And a fucking bell. Remember the bell?
I remember the bell.
We used to make the joke and say Damon will be in his hotel saying, "Could you bring up the bell? I want to rehearse."
Yeah, I remember that bell. Did it get a crack in it at some point?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
One of my favorite memories was meeting the guys in De La Soul on that tour and kind of geeking out on them because that was part of my childhood. Yeah. And just wanting to talk to them every time I saw them. And then the tour ended, and then you think, well, everybody goes on their ways. And then probably 2013, 14, I was working for a band called Death From Above. And we were flying somewhere, and we were in a lounge, and they walked in. And they walked right by, and he looked at me, and he just kind of walked by. And then I thought, he didn't recognize me. And he came back up, he goes, "You work for NERD, right?" And then I went and sat with him, and and it made me look real good in front of the new guys I was working with.
They were so cool.
They were.
Maceo. It's like just the coolest guys. And again, do you mean, I grew up with them as well. Do you mean in terms of discovering, what we used to call electro and then hip hop and that kind of stuff. And, they were pioneers, right? And you meet them and they're just like, hey, yo, what's going on? Regular people, you know what I mean? Just approachable, you know what I mean? It was fantastic.
Yeah. So the gig we're on,
Yes.
Duran Duran.
Duran Duran.
When did you start working for these guys?
I couldn't give you an exact date. I think it's between 2006, 2007. I think that's when I started. I think my first album campaign was it Red Carpet Massacre? Was that the time? Was that?
I think, yeah.
And I think we did a couple of things, but I think the first main thing was the New York residency, I think. But yeah, memory's hazy, but certainly from about 2000, late 2006, 7. Because I think they had the comeback tour, then there was something happened, and then I got on board after that. So it wasn't for the comeback tour, it was just after that.
Okay. And what keeps you coming back to this gig? Because we tend to go off and do our other thing, but every time this starts up, it's like this family comes back together. The family keeps getting smaller and smaller, but...
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I think I want to say it fits. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think by that I mean that it fits for me in terms of a gig. I mean, and I think I fit the gig. I mean, I think there's I think I click enough with Nick. I'm not trying to say Nick's my best friend. I'm not going to say that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, he's my boss. I mean, first and foremost, but we get on. And, I think I understand him. When we do talk, we hardly ever talk about music, right? Yeah. We hardly ever talk about music unless it's like, okay, I want this change or that change. But when we do sit down and have a conversation, or wherever we are having a conversation, it's mainly about art. I mean, it's never really about music. But no, it's been a good camp. It's been a good camp. It's been fun.
Yeah,
I mean, Certainly, in the earlier days of me being here, it was fun. Do you mean? And I'm sure there's some more fun's going to return. Do you mean? But I don't know. I think it's just I think the boys like continuity in terms of the same faces. And, it's just one of those gigs that, if you find something that fits, it fits. I think it just fits.
Yeah. I don't think it's ever been said out loud, but I think you're right. I think they prefer not to change. And if it works, it works.
It works, yeah. I mean, you might as well have something that, that gets it. I think once you get them, I mean, in terms of how they see themselves, because I don't see them as like, unapproachable kind of like pop stars. Actually, I think they're quite grounded for the amount of success that they've had. And so when you kind of push past the, oh my God, it's Nick Rose, it's Simon Bon, it's John Taylor, it's Roger Taylor. I mean, once you get past, that, because obviously I grew up listening to the music as well. I mean, I remember thinking, Reflex was when I first heard that record, I was like, wow. Yeah. When I heard Save a Prayer for the first time, I was like, wow. And I was a kid, right? So, but once you get past the point of like, I used to hear these guys on the radio, but now working with them, and then you tune into who they are, and then it's like, okay, cool, I get you. I mean, they understand you because they've seen tons of people. I mean, you're not the first person they've seen. Yeah. And they'll get you and think, okay, I see how you fit here. It works. Yeah. If that makes sense.
It does. Okay. Like I tell people, I wasn't a fan growing up. I knew the songs, I knew the hits. I'm a fan now. I think I've mentioned this to you before. Like sometimes, I think I tell everyone, sometimes I'm doing my gig and I look across the stage, I'm like, fuck, that's Duran Duran. Right. But when I got the gig, I took it as an opportunity to make money. Yep. And
fair enough. First and foremost, that's what it's about.
Yeah. Right. I think our production manager, Richard Young, rest his soul, brought me in, and I said, so how long, are you going to need me? Once we went through the whole, you don't need to hear that story, how I got the gig. He said, well, I've got you till April, end of April. And we were doing that promo tour for All You Need Is Now. And then he leaves. He leaves. And they brought in another guy. And I like to tell people, I just didn't tell the other guy I was supposed to leave. so I'm still here.
Fair enough.
I haven't told anyone I was supposed to leave in April
funny.
2011.
It's no. I mean, I think we call it the core. I think the core elements of this organization work really well. Do you mean?
Yeah.
I think the boys know that. I think whichever iteration of management kind of like forms around us can see that it works well as well.
Yeah. I'll ask you this. I've asked other techs. What to you from people on the outside? What's the biggest misconception of what we do? Like,
the glamour. I mean, especially the last few days, it's been tiring. I mean, if you try and explain, it isn't the glamour that you see. It can be fun, it can be interesting.
Yeah,
but it's it's. I think you have to kind of wear two hats when you do this gig. You have to have one that says this is work, and then when the gig's done, you have another one that says, okay, well, how do I enjoy the opportunity of being in this place, right?
Yeah.
Because you'll wake up one morning and you're in Japan. You're like, okay, well, I'm in Japan. What are we gonna do now? And next day you're flying off to Sydney. I mean, so it's like you kind of have to forget about other people's perception of it and see it as like, one, it's a job, and two, it's an opportunity.
and that's what people think is the glamour. Like,
Right.
oh my God, you were in Sydney, Japan, Korea.
So I went to Sydney once. This was with Heather Small. Sydney from the UK is a 20-hour flight with a stopover in Singapore. It might even be 24 hours, right? Certainly 20 hours in the plane, right? So we leave the UK, get to Sydney, do a show for the Olympics, fly back to the UK.
Yeah.
Right? What's glamorous about that?
I know.
You spent 40 hours in the plane to do a show that lasted an hour and then to fly back in 3 days. I mean, there's no glamour there.
There were. I think my first international gig was in ERD, and it was like that. Okay, we're gonna go do Singapore and do the F1 concert.
Right.
Then we're gonna fly right back, and then we're gonna stay in a hotel, and then the next day we'll be in Virginia.
Yeah.
You know.
You're like, what?
I think if people saw local tour catering, they would say, "Oh yeah, that's not glamorous
Now
at
that
all."
I'm vegan, it's like, it's terrible.
You're vegan?
Did I mention that?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Anything else you want to share today?
I might do. I bought a new computer recently.
The computer.
It's great.
We are finishing up. Like, this is it. Tomorrow, the day after this interview, we're doing the last show of this leg of of our tour. What is this tour been like in comparison to what we did in the past? After coming through what we came through with the lockdown, the pandemic, sir. Like, what do you notice any differences in how touring is approached?
There's certainly a difference. I mean, just in the, if you like, the separation, the bubbles that have been created, that still exist. So, that's certainly different. And that does change the feel, the vibe of the tour, because, I say everyone's separate, not in kind of wanting to be separate, but there's separation, which of course is separation, right? So that's different compared to the previous thing. And I think because of that, it has changed the mood of the tour. I think, it's kind of like, it's because COVID is still with us, if you have got time, you're more likely to feel like, okay, well, let me still keep myself separate, because you never know. And the last thing you want to do is kind of be in a situation where you can't work because you've got
because you went out for dinner.
Yeah, which is a completely reasonable thing to do.
Yeah,
So I think that's changed. That's I don't know how long it's going to continue for, but it's certainly still with us now.
And we've had a few days off on this tour. Certainly more than I've ever had on any tour, but I've noticed that most of my days off are just spent ordering delivery and watching.
I'm certainly guilty of that.
Yeah,
because not only because, like, I bought a new computer. Have I mentioned that?
No.
Okay.
You haven't mentioned
I
this.
might mention it in a minute. But I bought this new tablet. It's amazing. Ongoing joke. And, but for me, when I get home, I've got 3 kids and the missus, and it's like, it's difficult to have time to be productive at home. So, because we're kind of used to being in our own bubble and doing our own thing and having the space and time, then, I'm like, okay, well, I might as well use that to kind of get things that I can't get done at home as quickly done here, because I can sit in my hotel room for 5 hours of a night and just do stuff. Do you mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, on that topic of, you said you had 3 kids and missus, we, this kind of, this was one of my favorite parts of the tour is, I forgot where we were, but we didn't see you all day. We just assumed Oz is out with his camera, taking pictures. And the next morning you said, hey, I went and had dinner with my brother. How was that? And you could, if you don't mind telling the story, like.
No, I don't mind. I mean,
and I was just like, it was, to me, it was because that I don't know if that would ever happen to me. I don't know.
But do you know what I think? Going back to what we said about earlier about work and using the time that you're somewhere as an opportunity.
Yeah,
that was an opportunity. So the story there is where do you start that one, right? So my dad had me, and I knew at an early age that he had. So him and Mum separated, and I knew that he had more children. So, but I don't think they knew about me. So, so time passes, everyone grows up. I'm a big man now. So, my sister, I get a message on my phone. Hi, Lee, because my family call me Lee's middle name. It's Maureen. I'm like, who's Maureen? Who's this Maureen guy? Messaging me, and I'm like, Maureen who? She goes, Maureen Henderson. I'm like, oh, okay. Right? So my dad had Maureen and my brother Joey a few years after me. But they only found out about me a couple of years ago, just before pre-pandemic.
But you knew about them?
I knew about them pretty much from about like 10, 12
Okay.
years. So then, like, fast forward to now, I'm like, well, I haven't had an opportunity to meet my sister who lives in London, but because I'm in Chester, she's in London, I haven't had the time to meet up with her. But we was going to Sweden. So I messaged, we had a mutual friend that is actually my dad's partner who was in contact with them, messaged him. He messaged, I messaged him saying, like, I'm going to be in Sweden. Do you want to meet up? Right? He lives in Sweden. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, yeah, great to meet up. So when we got to Sweden, I thought, well, let's go meet him. Went to meet him. He's this like huge guy. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know, what am I, 5'8", 5'9", right? He's about 6'3", 6'4". And yeah, it was really nice. It was really nice kind of finally kind of getting over that, siblings meeting siblings out.
Yeah.
And from his point of view, he didn't know me. He didn't know about my existence up until, like I said, just the pandemic. He's like, oh, right, I've got an older brother. So yeah, that's kind of the story.
Yeah.
So, but it's nice meeting you.
Did you, if you don't want me to talk about this, did you see any like resemblances in the personalities?
I think I saw
the picture. He's much more handsome than you.
Yeah, I can't blame you for saying that. I thought the same too. What's funny is I look at him and I see my dad. He looks at me and sees my dad. You know what I mean? So it's kind of interesting how we see each other. I mean, in terms of our father, but I don't know. I think I need to spend more time with him to kind of really see any kind of like traits, but certainly looks wise. I mean, you could see that there's a family resemblance. Yeah.
Do you think at a time, let's say social media didn't exist, like it wasn't as advanced as it is now, do you think it would have been as easy for them to find you?
Do you know what?
Because social media makes it easy to stalk or to locate people or just to see how people are doing,
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of like, we're kind of skimming over.
I'm not saying they were stalking you.
No. But there's many years of kind of backstories to kind of fill in with that story. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the overall picture of what happened. But underneath that, before social media, you had family.
Yeah.
And the family knew what was going on.
Yeah.
Just like you didn't know what was going on. Do you know what I mean?
You just heard the whispers.
Yeah,
I mean, every family has it.
Right? So, there's the underlying, like, oh, this person knows, this person knows, this person knows, but you don't know Jack, right? So I think at some point there'd have been, a kind of like, oh, do you know that person over there? That's your brother. Like,
yeah. And there's so many stories of people I actually know that found out like their dad lived up the block.
Yeah.
That their dad wasn't their dad, but their dad.
Yeah, totally.
It's crazy things like that.
I mean, I'm not just saying it's a West Indian thing, but certainly in the West Indian, in West Indian culture, there is we understand the errant father. I mean, the errant father is kind of a figure certainly in the West Indian culture. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
It's, there are many families that have the same type of history.
Yeah.
Do you mean so? It wouldn't surprise me.
It's prominent in the Mexican
But
culture as well.
It happens. It happens.
In
every culture. I mean, it's not just in a West Indian one or a Mexican one. It happens across the board. It's just life. I mean,
well, man, I wanted to talk about this a little more. Your photography.
Yes.
You're a very good photographer.
Thank you very much.
You've also recently. £5. That's a tenner. You've also started during the pandemic framing your photos and selling them.
Yeah.
When did your affinity for photography start?
I think it's always been music and photography. It's always been, back in the day, I thought if I could do music and make some money from that quickly, I can then pay for photography because photography is expensive.
Yeah.
If you go and buy a roll of film as a kid, it's your pocket money. If you got pocket money, right? So, it's expensive. So, music and photography have always been kind of like hand in hand. And then because of touring gives you the opportunity, I'm saying, you go to work, but there's an opportunity to do something else. So it gave me the opportunity to walk around with my camera.
It gives you a landscape, a different landscape every day.
World. Yeah, especially like in America, which I've said this a few times. I'm going to make it on record now. I like going to. I love leaving, right? But I like going to because every city, every state, is a completely different. The landscape or peoplescape, or even it's just every single place you go to in America is completely different. You go to Baltimore, it's a certain thing. You go to New York, you go to LA. Do you mean you go to Colorado? It's completely different.
Yeah.
There are certainly similarities or things that can that happen in every single state. And from the perspective of my camera, it's a nice excuse to kind of be able to walk around and try and capture some things. Some are good, some are bad. You might take me to places where I choose not to take that picture because it's been seen so many times before, and it's not going to tell a newer story. It's just kind of, it's just rehashing the same story, which is known.
Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity to kind of like just go around and take pictures. And so from that, I'm like, well, what do you do next? So when the pandemic hit, our industry was decimated. There was nothing, right? So I was lucky that at a certain point I had a house that I could sell. I sold it, and got this lump sum of money. There's only one thing that happens when you have cash: it goes, right? It's going to end, right?
Yeah.
So if it's going to go, what are you going to do in the meantime to make it kind of work for you? So I thought about it. I thought, well, I can't do anything that I don't want to do because it just won't work. What's the other thing I want to do? Which is photography, which I've been doing. So I thought, okay, well, how do you take photography to the next level from my perspective? And it was like, well, if you have a picture, the ultimate aim for that picture is to hang on your wall. How do you get it there? You go and you get a print, you go and see a framer, he puts in a frame, turns that print into an object, you hang the object on your wall, it's fantastic. I thought, okay, well, it's really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if I kind of learn how to frame, I can frame for myself. So I thought, okay, well, that's the idea, learn how to frame. And I thought, okay, well, cool, if I can do it for myself, then I can do it for other people too. There's got to be other photographers who want their work framed, right? I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to frame my prints, then I might as well try and sell it. If I can sell my prints, I can sell other prints. So I taught myself how to make frames. Long story short, I first went to this shop, asked them if they would teach me how to make frames. They said they don't teach. Fast forward a year, I go back to the same shop, although they'd moved location, and asked them for some hinging tape because I'd run out. And if I'd call the wholesaler, it would taken, I needed it like now as opposed to in a few days' time. They sold me some hinging tape and offered me a job. Do you know what I mean? So it got to a point where I developed my skills enough to be employed doing it. But then obviously if I could do that, then the job doesn't make any sense to me because my learning is in the right arena. I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I didn't take the job up, but I continued to pursue selling frames. I set up a framing company called Curated Frames, and that's what we do. We sell my prints and other photographers' prints framed
In your frames.
Yeah.
Okay. And how's that doing?
It's okay. I mean, obviously,
The startup.
It's like it did the job I thought it was going to do, which is it helped us live between the time of, in the middle of the pandemic and the pandemic ending, and then touring starting up again. But the next thing with that now is like, okay, well, how do you take picture framing forward in the 21st century? Because it's not a case. It's not just about having a print framed. It's like, what would a 21st century framer do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the next iteration of Curated Frames is going to, have a more. I don't want to give too much away, but it's just going to have elements that will allow you to engage with the story, and hopefully then that engagement will then emotionally convince you to buy the print. So it's
And display.
Yeah. Because if you see a picture of a person, any person, you're like, okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
But if you know the backstory, then you're like, okay, I love that. So then you hang it on your wall.
Yeah. I have one of your pictures hanging on my wall, and I know the backstory of it.
It's you.
It's Niall.
Oh, okay.
My son has the one of me.
All right, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
That Niall picture in itself, though, was you got to say thanks to Niall Rogers for that, because I went up to him and I said you can obviously see how I take pictures. I said would you mind if I printed X amount of these prints, and would you sign them for the crew who would want some? And he said yes.
Yeah.
How amazing is that?
He's such a good guy like that.
He's a legend, but again, he's just so approachable.
I think, he's a legend, worth millions, but
magnanimous for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, man, thank you for your time. I know we tried this a few days ago and it didn't work out.
I hope this works.
One more question.
Go on in.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to say, as I said, that I think for you. I think this is fantastic, and I wish you the best of success with this.
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
More power
Thank
to
you.
Is it Joe? What's his name? Josh Rogan. 200 million. Is that you got? Joe Rogan. What's his name?
Like 200 million. Yeah.
Okay, Bernie.
I 10%,
wish. Right.
I'll take $2. It's called Is Breakfast Included? If we were having breakfast right now, what would you have?
If I was having breakfast now, what would I have?
And you can give the non-vegan and the vegan choices.
What's my favorite No, I think if I was having breakfast now, would I have it? Was it at home? Or it's got to be like if we're in Spain or Italy, because the tomatoes are like, Italian and Spanish tomatoes are like, they're not like UK tomatoes. They actually taste like tomatoes, right? Nice, sweet, juicy. So you got some tomato, you've got extra virgin oil, you've got avocado, you've got toast. That would be.
I was going to make a British joke, but I won't.
But that'd be my. That's the breakfast I'm thinking of right now in terms of breakfast. Yeah.
I was going to say, how did the British manage to take the flavor out of a vegetable?
Mate.
I'm joking.
Yeah. Trust me. There was a what was it? I can't remember what it was, but there was a
I'm joking.
No. But there was a TV thing about this guy who was comparing a like Spanish strawberry and a British strawberry, right? So you got the Spanish one, and like put some pressure on it, and just you can see this lovely juice just oozing out of this strawberry, right? He got an English strawberry, threw against the wall, it bounced back. That's the difference. Oh, damn. I hope you're not getting hit though.
No.
But it's true.
Well, is there anything what's your Instagram for Curated Frames?
So Curated Frames is Curated Frames Limited. If you search Curated Frames, you'll find that.
Is limited spelled out or LTD?
Okay. And my Insta is Ozzie Henderson. Feel free to come and join me. Say hi. Be nice. On either one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And look out for anything else Curated Frames, apart from the Australian one. That's not me.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time again.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Absolute pleasure.
Have a good night, man.
And you.
Well, right on. Ozzie Henderson, keyboard tech extraordinaire. You can find out more about Ozzie at his Instagram, Ozzie Henderson. Also, give him a follow on Curated Frames Limited, and that is LTD, not limited spelled out. See what he's all about. See what he's got going. Maybe order some frames, some prints. All right, guys, I am done. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you next week.